like your sweater.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. I guess I said that because I haven't seen you since 2016, the distant past. Welcome. I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, and of course you know this is Carlos Kalmar, music director of the Oregon Symphony.
Hi, good evening.
I hope at least another 5 or 10 people will show up for the actual concert.
Well, I actually thought this would happen, meaning this is a concert where, well, it's cold.
And icy.
It's kind of icy.
And actually, we changed the program. We're going to do that Antarctic Symphony by Vaughan Williams.
Vaughan Williams.
Tonight. Yeah, it'd be just the thing. I love living downtown at times like this, I'll tell you. I just stroll over here. Yeah. It's great. But thank you for being here tonight. It's really great to see you. And this conversation will be just like the concert. We don't do it for those who don't show up. We do it for those who do.
Absolutely.
All right.
Although there's a camera for.
Oh, that's
so
true.
whatever we say. Yeah.
Yeah. It will be immortalized on YouTube, and you can watch that video at All Classical Portland, and tell your friends, and tell them what an awesome concert you saw, which will happen again tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
And tomorrow night, Sunday night, yes, Monday night, tomorrow afternoon, Monday night. And Carlos and I will do this conversation. We might be joined on one of those by cellist Alban Gerhardt.
Yeah, actually in the rehearsal, just to be politically not correct, which is kind of what is up to, in the rehearsal actually of the Dutilleaux, there was something that we had to fix in the orchestra, and we did it twice, and then I probably said, we can actually do it a little faster than that, and I said, and there was some, really? And I said, yes, we can. And Alban looks at me and says, that's not modern. We have to make this piece great again. Horrible, I know. But
that's funny.
I thought, like, different times.
That's good. Yeah, Alban's wonderful. I finally got to meet him on Thursday when we did Thursdays at 3 together, and he played wonderfully and spoke well, and what a delightful man. No wonder you love him so much, aside from his playing, which is awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I'm very happy after him being our first artist in residency here at the Oregon Symphony. And it has to be said that as an artist in residence, he set the bar very high, because Alban is not exactly what you call a shy human being. So he played everywhere, made trillions of contacts in our community, and it's really great. And it was really tricky to replace him as artist in residence, but Colin Curry is doing a phenomenal job himself. I can only say it. I attribute it actually to the quality of our city, and of course to the quality of our orchestra, that we are able to attract so great artists in residence who really want to be here.
Yeah, I would agree. You have to program a lot of music. We see Carlos up here conducting, and we know he does rehearsals. You might not think about all the planning that he has to do for, okay, this concert will have these 3 or 4 pieces, and okay, that's a challenge in itself, and then there's another concert with it, and then there's another, and then there's next season and more concerts. And you're constantly doing this big jigsaw puzzle of how to put things together. And I know you put a lot of thought to that. And the first 2 pieces on tonight's program go together so perfectly, and they're both things that most of us have never heard in concert. And they both have to do with French poetry. And the first one has to do with breezes. And then the second one, the Dutilleaux piece, begins with this percussion sound that sounds just like wind. I don't know, how is that sound made?
Well, matter of fact, because of course I read the score, I see something, and in the score it's written in French. Now I speak some French, but it's like, sometimes I like actually to know the things specifically, because then you hear a sound at the beginning, it's just a little bit of something like that, coming from actually a snare drum. And you think, like, come on, you know how a snare drum is being played and what kind of mallets you can need, what on earth. So I went back to our friends in the percussion section, asked my principal, Neil Daponte, Neil, show me, what on earth are you guys doing?
See, I didn't even recognize that as a snare drum. What does he
It
do?
is a
Actually,
so
he's in here.
it
We
is
can
a
have-
snare drum together with a cymbal,
Okay.
independently. The cymbal you actually probably recognize like a cymbal,
Yeah, suspended cymbal.
suspended cymbal.
Right.
Slightly different the way it sounds, but okay, fine. But the snare drum. So they showed me the fun thing about percussion instrumentalists is that when, first of all, they do that on their own, they have kind of this game going on, but then a conductor like me is interested in how do you do that, or what on earth are you playing, stuff like that, and they are so proud of, oh, we have options. So they show me that actually this snare drum, one way to play is with kind of a steel brush that you actually use in jazz and pop music sometimes, which looks like, yeah, it's a handle with several things coming out, and it can be small, which makes it higher pitched, or it can be bigger, which makes it darker. And then they showed me another thing that actually I immediately said, oh, that looks like what you have in your bathtub at home. Meaning this
A rubber ducky?
the thing that you put in the hole so that water doesn't go away when it's not automatic that you do a switch. Something that you have to pull, and this thing that you pull is
The
metal.
little chain
The
thing.
chain. That's how it looks. I said, oh, it's from you. Did you dismantle your bathtub? And they said, no, it's not that, but it looks like it.
But they would. if
And
they
that
had
is
to.
what they are using.
That's okay. That's really interesting. Thank you. Now, both of
I'm
these
sure I
pieces-
didn't clarify a damn
Oh,
thing.
you did your best, Carlos. That's all we can ask. So both of these pieces by Franck and Dutilleaux have to do with poetry. Now, when you're conducting something that has to do with poetry, whether the poetry was added later or it inspired the music, how much do you care? Do you read all that poetry and try to figure it out?
Well, essentially I read the poetry. If I, of course, see in the score, this is based on the poetry, and then it comes like, then I like, never mind. I read the first lines, and then I think, well, I can actually read program notes. They will explain to me what is there.
So those are written for you. I always thought they were written for...
When it comes to the Dvorak symphonic poems, the ballads of Jaromir Erben, they are phenomenal, but they are, I don't know, 8 pages long of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and at the end, yeah, you know the story. Because I'm
You
not...
don't want to read all that, and you don't need to.
And it's Czech.
True. Those stories are horrible, ghastly,
Yeah,
awful.
this is not
bloody
ghastly
things.
at all.
Yeah, okay. Never mind.
This is more poetry. The poetry based on which the Dutilleaux concerto is based, that is more poetry like, oh, well, I have to get my brain going. The poetry for the Éolide, the breezes, is more like, fine, yeah, breezy.
This first piece, The Breezes, Les Éolides by Cesar Franck, if you know the Franck Symphony in D minor, there's occasional bits in this that will remind you of that. But a lot of it reminded me more of something like The Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's this it's got a story to tell, even if you don't know what that story is, and it's very breezy, flighty, floaty. kind of music.
This is a piece that I came to discover and learn for this concert. Never done it before. And I must say, it's one of those million times when I think, it's so sad, why doesn't anybody play this piece? Because it's really good music. It does exactly what you think breezes are, meaning it floats around very gently, and you realize that it's, Franck sometimes has this tendency of, because he tends to be harmonically somewhat complex, that he goes and deviates from the tonality and goes, and you'll think like, hey, Cesar, you are over there. How are you going to come back? He manages, this composer. He's a genius. And in this piece, it's not so much. It's very kind of, yes, he goes places, a lot of them, but it's very kind of one thing and one idea that he kind of milks very well. And of course, another thing that you realize is that there is some influence in this piece. I would not so much say Paul Dukas and Sorcerer's Apprentice. I would say Richard Wagner, Tristan. Because to Cesar Franck happened what happens to so many composers. During their lifetime, they were exposed to Richard Wagner in general, but mainly to Tristan. They heard Tristan somewhere, and they were probably sitting there in the theater after the show was over and thinking, what on earth has just happened? I cannot understand the world. This is just beyond. And then they wrote pieces that were somewhat influenced by Tristan and Isolde. And well, at least the last concert I conducted here was Turangalila, all Tristan and Isolde. It's everywhere.
Yeah. And then The Breezes ends rather suddenly, as though the last breeze has just blown away.
Exactly.
Then the next piece, the Cello Concerto by Dutilleaux, begins with that percussion sound. And then we go through all of this amazing, fascinating music for cello and orchestra. And then that piece also ends kind of abruptly.
Oh, yeah.
So Alban's a little bit concerned that you won't applaud enough because, you know, it doesn't end with a big, loud thing. And Carlos loves it when you applaud, too. So make sure you applaud a lot at the end of the first half of this concert.
I'm actually not worried at all.
Okay. I love this
I
piece.
actually, as you have heard me, there are two things that you have heard me say. First of all, this is a piece you want to hear more than once.
Yeah.
And second, I actually love soft music.
There's a lot of it in this.
And this concerto, actually, a lot of it. It's actually, whatever you imagine a concerto should be, no, it's not really there. Meaning it's not like, oh, the orchestra sets it up, the soloist comes in, and virtuosity everywhere, and the last movement is very fast, and all of that. No. First of all, this is a concerto that has 5 movements, and one movement goes into the other, essentially. The music never stops. Second, the music is rather soft spoken. It's modern in language. It's a modern concerto. The music is tremendously intense, and it has a lot of melody, but in a very modern language. So it's kind of like, wow. And then it, of course, relates to poetry by Charles Baudelaire, but it's not program music at all. Meaning it's not like, oh, the poetry tells me this, therefore I'm writing that. No, it's more like Henri Dutilleaux thinking about the poetry and writing down and following a little bit the line of the poetry without being descriptive at all. And yes, among many other things, the ending is astounding. Because, you know, like in the first piece, the Cesar Franck, it's kind of customary that when pieces end softly, they will end also not only softly but slowly. The music is slow. And that's how Les Éolides ends. The Dutilleaux just is actually at the end fast and just dissipates, goes away.
It's one of those pieces where, if you've never heard it before, I think it's best just to listen attentively and let it happen and be fascinated by the incredible string sonorities and the really tasteful, creative percussion writing, and Alban and his incredible talent playing the cello. Don't try to analyze it or try to figure out what does this mean or what's it about. Just dig it. Just listen.
I think that is a great advice, because if you are actually following the very useful and great program notes and trying to read, okay, now we are probably moving to what poetry line is in movement 2. Why? Just, yeah, first time, just let it wash over you, and you're going to be delighted.
This is wonderful. Then there's an intermission. Have a glass of wine if you wish. Then, at the end of the concert, we get to Pines of Rome, the great spectacular piece that is always more effective in concert than on recordings, for sure. But there's also a Haydn symphony in there, and this is another aspect of his programming. I've never known any conductor who loved Haydn as much as you do. And Symphony number 80, nobody plays the Symphony number 80 by Haydn. We've got some symphonies in our library at All Classical Portland where we have multiple recordings. We have one of the Symphony number 80.
Not much recordings exist about this symphony.
So
funny,
what
funny
made you pick this one?
That's good music.
D minor, which is interesting. He didn't write that many minor key symphonies.
Actually, true. I mean, it's not a story, but so we were in rehearsal, and in the intermission, Alban and I were hanging out, and I, of course, was saying, you know, in this concert we play a symphony by Haydn that is just absolutely spectacular. And this is, you know, by the way, I heard, because Alban still lives in Berlin, I heard Berlin fill with Simon Rattle, who is another Haydn fanatic, play this symphony by Haydn that nobody knows, and in the last movement it sounds like something, but you have no idea where you are. Meaning there is something happening in the music and you think like, what? Meaning classical music, Haydn's language, but what? And I showed him the score of this number 80, and he said, that's the one that Simon did. So, this is a symphony that, the unfortunate thing with Joseph Haydn is, first of all, the richness of, meaning the amount of pieces that he wrote. Just the fact that you have 104 symphonies to pick from makes it kind of difficult, because honest to God, I do not know 104 symphonies by Haydn. I know a lot, but not 104. Number two, for whatever reason it happened that around 40, 45, maybe 50 of them have a name. Some of the name just happened during time, etc. The Miracle, Surprise, London, The Bear, blah, blah, blah. And those symphonies are more famous than the others. Why? That has nothing to do with the quality of the music,
But
because...
there's a lesson here for us. If you want to be famous, get a nickname.
Oh, I have
Choose
to...
it carefully.
I have to think about that.
Yeah, I want to think about that too. Carlos Kalmar, let's see.
Yeah, don't say it. And
We'll have a contest. Nickname for Carlos
that's a good one.
for your last season. Never mind, I'm kidding.
And then this symphony also doesn't belong to the two famous cycles that he wrote. It is not one of the Paris symphonies. It's certainly not one of the London symphonies. It's just somewhere there and has a number where you say 80. Fine. But, so here's the catch. The symphony starts actually like in the Sturm und Drang period, meaning very like this type, Haydn. And then he starts to make, I wouldn't call it jokes, but this very distinctive Haydn language that makes you constantly smile because it's so witty. So he plays this Sturm und Drang, very intense first theme, and then the second theme of the first movement happens and you think you are in the Alps. There is yodeling happening or something like that. Very funny. And then he goes, like Haydn does sometimes, into, he just stops and continues and stops and waits and continues. And everybody, every time he stops and continues, he's in God knows what other tonality that you didn't expect, which is he plays tricks with us. And then he composes a second movement that is just a delightful musical endeavor. And the third movement is, yeah, I would say it's one of the faster minuets, just good music in general, with a bunch of wrong accents, but never mind. And then comes this very odd last movement. And so talking to friends, talking to my wife, I said, you know what the thing is with the last movement? The last movement is actually very easy, because it is tin, 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 pam, 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 tin, 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 ba-da-din, tin. You think. That sounds easy. Because it's not tin, 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 yan, tan, tan. It's ta, 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 ti, 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 ti. Everything is offbeat, literally. Only the fourth little phrase is on beat for half a second, and then everything is offbeat. And you are like, where?
He must have had so much fun with the orchestra that he wrote for, that they worked together for so long. I can just imagine them in rehearsal. Now what are you throwing at us?
You're throwing at us. And it's, for the Oregon Symphony, it's the same. Actually, the Oregon Symphony, during the 13 plus years that I have been the music director, has played quite a bit of Haydn. And still, everything is new. This is actually the first performance by the Oregon Symphony of Symphony number 80.
Of everything else on this program except the
With
Respighi.
except the Pines of Rome, yes.
So how challenging and fun for them. Now, did you have trouble with all these people getting here for rehearsals?
I was actually really afraid and started to think, what do I do what if? Yeah. Nothing. There were maybe one or two who kind of had to put on the chains because they live in the hills. But essentially everybody just takes a little more time to travel here and they come.
Excellent. Just like
yeah,
these nice
I mean,
people.
you're here.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, there's still snow out there.
Oh, yeah. Pines of Rome by Respighi. This is the piece that has the recording of a nightingale in it at one point. And they actually used to have to, put on a record in the back of the stage to play this nightingale recording. I saw a nighttime outdoor performance of this piece years ago, the Philadelphia Orchestra. And at that part, a bat flew in and started flitting around above the orchestra and then flew out again. It was great. It was Nightingale's night off, I guess. But it was lovely. You're not going to do a special effect like that tonight, though, are you?
You know that the first time I ever conducted this piece, which was centuries ago probably, I thought about that. Because I thought, well, it's a recording of the Nightingale, and the recording was made probably in 1910 or something like that, something ridiculous. And then maybe we should spice it up.
You thought about it.
Yeah, and then I was told, don't mess around, has worked for decades. If it ain't broken, blah.
So what recording is used now?
I don't know. It has, in the score, it has very specific, it says, and now play the recording number, some long number. It's there.
You use what you use. There's also a beautiful off-stage trumpet solo.
Yeah.
In this piece. I saw the setup backstage for that. Lots of color, lots of excitement.
Well, this actually, there is no, this is not a mystery why this piece is so unbelievable successful, because it has, as far as music of the 20th century goes, it has everything. It has written success all over, even more than the other two cycles, meaning Fountains and Feste Romane, that he wrote on the same topic of Rome. This, sometimes it happens that a composer just in one piece gets literally every little thing there is right. The length, the colorfulness, the instrument, in our case, the instrumentation, and the in-between, the amount of power or lack thereof, etc. And in this piece, it starts with this screaming children, and you really hear, you don't hear screaming children, but you hear this very high-pitched color of orchestra, and you hear these little marches here and there interrupted, and then at the end of this first movement, which lasts 2 minutes and 40 seconds, around that you hear kind of, mom is calling, dinner's ready. Not literally, but you hear actually the trumpets playing a wrong note, and you think like, well, playtime is over, and then you are in a very distant world in the catacombs, etc., etc., and then you travel, and at the end of the piece you are in the Via Appia, and it's the literally same effect as pictures in exhibition, of an exhibition by not by Maurice Ravel.
You're thinking Bolero.
No,
I was thinking Bolero when you said that.
No, I'm actually really
building,
thinking Mussorgsky instrumentation by Ravel, because you hear something and it builds and it builds and it gets bigger, and wow, it's exactly the effect that you said, meaning you have to hear it here.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here. You're going to be glad you're here. Recordings available on a table in the lobby, including my favorite organ symphony recording when James DePriest was the music director, and that's the Pines of Rome and the Fountains of Rome and Roman festivals. Thank you for being here tonight. You're going to love the concert. He's Carlos Kalmar.
And he's Robert McBride.
And you're the audience.